Star Citizen's new event, Jumptown 2.0, is easily the best event that they've had so far. It's presented us with the best ground and air combat to date, bringing the community together in one area to complete an objective. But unfortunately, it's highlighted some shortcomings of the game itself in its present state, as well as in the event's mechanics. And so I want to share with you guys some thoughts about how it could be improved based on some notes I've taken, both from my own personal experiences as well as yours. But of course, as we go along, definitely comment down below anything that I missed or anything that you want to see improved personally, because it's really going to help the conversation and help CIG produce better events going forward. And finally, if you guys think I did a good job by the end, as always, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell because most of you guys haven't. So to try to keep this video organized, I'm going to categorize the issues and solutions into some basic categories. First is the lab design and how that can be improved. Then it's the event design and what mechanics can be changed to make it more enjoyable. Then it's gameplay design issues which are related to the event but not necessarily part of the event mechanics. And then finally some significant bugs and what I think needs to be focused on to help the future of this event be more enjoyable for everybody. So beginning with the lab design, CIG clearly put in a lot of effort to try to make it a really fun FPS map to encourage that sort of experience, to give you ground combat as well as air combat, and I appreciate that. But in reality, it didn't really work out, and I think that there's a couple reasons why. The new FPS features that they added around the outside with all the containers and places to hide work really well up close but don't provide any cover for anybody approaching on foot from outside. And in fact, it makes it very hard to approach because there are just so many angles to pay attention to. Even worse though is that there's no air cover for people on foot, and so in a lot of cases they're getting shot by ships before they can even get close. And that's not to mention that the A2 bomber is a thing. It drops big heavy Moabs, and you know what? That kills everybody, and that's really no fun. There is of course a way to combat this if you are an organized group and know how to play well as a team, but the reality is that most people don't have those big groups to work together with. Being able to take down an A2 before it gets to its target, even with a single person inside of that ship, is actually pretty difficult given how tanky the A2 is. For example, there was one occasion where I had a big organized group and we did spot an A2 coming in quite a ways away. But by the time I was able to get in position and start shooting it, it was already halfway to the base, and by the time I killed it, it was already over our Jumptown area. And that's with a fully crewed Redeemer doing a ton of DPS. So the gist of it is that Jumptown is extremely hard to defend against bombers and air targets if you're doing FPS combat or if you're just on the ground. And so the result of this is that the ground combat for Jumptown, at least for this first iteration, was extremely rare. And finally, one of the biggest problems with the labs, which has exacerbated all of these problems, is the fact that it only has one entrance with an airlock. And that means that it's very difficult to assault and pretty damn easy to defend even with a single person and a grenade launcher. There's some other reasons though besides this that are related to the medical gameplay and downstates, but I'm gonna go over that in the general gameplay issues with Star Citizen relating to the event a little bit later in the video. So to improve this, I think they could do a number of things. First is spread out the design of the lab itself, providing more cover on approach further out. This would encourage more FPS combat in my mind. It should also provide ample cover against bombs like the A2 drops and against general aircraft that can shoot down at ground targets. Some great precedent for CIG to examine are games like PlanetSide 2, which have done a really good job of providing areas for FPS players to combat other FPS players while still having some cover from the air, because air can be a big problem in that game sometimes if you don't control the skies and you just want to have fun on the ground. One other way I think that they could introduce more cover around these bases from the air and from other ground targets would be to introduce them in areas that aren't frozen tundras, because they're all on frozen moons. It would be nice to see them on places like Daymar, on Microtech, or even on Hurston, where you've got some more natural foliage to cover your approach. Next, they should also introduce some AA turrets around the facility, and maybe even make it so that whoever holds the facility has the control of them, or at least maybe even just give the turrets themselves the ability to be controlled by players directly. That way you encourage the use of ground vehicles and more foot soldiers. Finally, and most importantly though, I think that the base itself needs to have more entrances. It can't just be one entrance with an airlock because that just encourages camping of that entrance. They should introduce a bunch of secret entrances or alternative ways to get in like they showed off in the sitcom presentation this year, where that guy was crawling through the vents to get inside to get a target. That would definitely make it a lot more interesting. Next, I want to talk about issues with the event itself. First of all, the time that the events run aren't really great for people, I would say, in Asia and Australia. For me, they were mostly running during the morning when I had to go to work, and so I couldn't really stream it or enjoy it. This is, I guess, a problem only for a select small group of people, but it is unfortunate that a portion of the community doesn't have the opportunity to play as much as another part of the community. So I would love to see this run at more times of the day, just in general, because it is a lot of fun, and every time I want to log on, I want to be able to play this. Next, let's talk about something that's probably going to be pretty controversial for some of you. Congo lining. This happened a lot during the event, and if you don't know what Congo lining is, basically what happened was that people who don't know each other would go down to the base, agree not to shoot each other, and just get the boxes to go sell and make some money. Just no PvP, no risk whatsoever. Everybody just agrees to line up and take boxes. Well, I like the fact that people were working together, and I think that's a good thing. I think that if the event's intention was to create a PvP environment, from that perspective, the event was somewhat of a failure. But before you go bashing people who did the Congo lining, keep in mind that it's the mechanics of the game that permitted them to do this, and so I don't think that they're the ones at fault. It's CIG's design of this event that has encouraged this behavior, and that needs to be changed if their intention is to make it PvP focused. And to be clear here, I think it is their intention. They've talked about balance in the past and how if you want to earn a lot of money, there should be some risk involved. And for this, where people are Congo lining, there's no risk involved. It's just a lot of free money in a short amount of time. That's a little bit game breaking for the mechanics and economy of Star Citizen. Some of the reasons behind Congo lining are parts of the event's design. First of all, the comm ray is always up, and so if you shoot another player, you're going to get a crime stat unless you take down the comm ray, which will give you a crime stat. Going to prison is a fun gameplay loop, but not when the event is limited and it sets you back. And so for people to shoot each other, well, there's just not a whole lot of incentive to do so. But it's not just the fact that you're going to go to prison if you shoot another player that deters people from doing PvP. It's also the fact that there just isn't a whole lot of stake in getting the boxes themselves. The boxes are virtually limitless. You don't have to put any money up to get them, you just stand in line and grab them out, and you get free positive money with only a small negative loss if you die based on whatever you were wearing. So if you're wearing just a basic flight suit that you get for free when you die, you've lost nothing. I think part of the reason why the original event was so successful was because that you had to put money up in order to get the supply of drugs, and the fact that it was limited. If you were the first to get there, you could purchase the entire supply, and the person behind you would be out of luck for the next 10, 15 minutes, or even longer. This made it so that once you got the cargo, you had something to lose, but furthermore, there was a finite resource to fight over. Lastly, there were a lot of performance issues related to the boxes that you were able to get out. Because you could get so many, oftentimes the entity cap would be reached for the area, causing the server to slow down and start causing problems, like your FPS would go down, stuff would start disappearing on its own, ships would randomly explode. It would get really weird. Now these are generally issues with the game's netcoding and bugs. These are things that are eventually going to be fixed, but there are ways to work around them with the game design, with the event design right now to make it run a bit better for everybody. So what about solutions? Well, first of all, the easy thing is to make this event run more often so more people can participate. I think that that's something they should definitely do no matter what. Next though, to help make the event a bit more PvP friendly, I would make it so that the comm ray is always down during the event start. Or maybe the comm ray going down is what triggers the event to go on. This would increase the risk for people on the ground, and it just makes sense because if there is an illegal drug lab, it makes sense that they wouldn't want people in the security forces to know what they were doing. They would want the comm ray down. This way, it's a lot more risky if you go down there. But I think one of the best ways to resolve issues with stake and to encourage PvP would be to utilize the new cargo refactor that they're adding in later in conjunction with a better lab design and a different purchase method. Here's what I mean. Instead of them making it so that you purchase small boxes every 30 seconds for free, bring back the kiosk that requires you to purchase the drugs. This would allow players to purchase them in larger quantity in a single transaction. But then, instead of having it immediately transported into a player's cargo magically, it should utilize the new cargo refactor and the lab to create a cargo delivery area near, say, a cargo pad that brings up your purchase near your ship at a cargo delivery kiosk or something like that. These boxes should be like big, full SCU ones, or greater. Perhaps you could even have the ability to choose which size SCU box you want. This could help reduce the entity count in the area if people are purchasing larger boxes, or if you're required to purchase at least an SCU box, which they do have in the game. But I think that the cargo refactor really starts to help solve one of the problems that was there with the original event, and that's if you got there first, you could purchase everything inside a really big ship. Now, if you use the cargo refactor with physical cargo being physically delivered to a physical cargo pad, you have to balance how much you're able to buy with how much you're able to actually move in a fast enough time to get away with the stuff that you just purchased. Because if it's being delivered to the surface and it's physically there, somebody could steal it from you and put it on their ship if you bought too much of it. So players are going to be discouraged from getting too much if they've not got the right support to help them do so. Now obviously the boxes shouldn't be delivered when you're not next to your ship. I think there should be a kiosk then at the cargo delivery area next to your ship that you press to have the boxes come up, but at least there's a time that you have to designate or set aside for moving those boxes physically into your ship. Finally, I want to address some major gameplay design issues not related to the event, but that affect the event that I discovered. First is that ground vehicles just are too troublesome to use. They're a lot of fun, and clearly they wanted us to use stuff like tanks and ballistas and the new APC that they added, but the reality is that the setup time to get them down there is just too troublesome. It can take you up to an hour to get a C2 loaded and get it down there, and once you get it down there, like for a ballista, what do you do to resupply it? You've got to pick it up, move it to somewhere you can resupply it, and then bring it back. It's just a big pain in the butt. I would love to see them add something where it could automatically be loaded into a ship. That way you cut down on the time to bring it there and you encourage its use. The Armco community did some testing and discovered that stuff like the Nova tank is detectable out to 3,500 meters. That's 3.5 kilometers. The Ballista can be seen out to 1.7. The Spartan, which is the APC, can be seen out to 1.5, and Cyclones can be seen out to 1.4. It's really difficult then to get up close and personal with these things and attack a ground target when everybody can see you coming from literally miles away. And keep in mind that everything except the Ballista is 100% dead if any air asset spots it. So everything aside from the Ballista I think needs to be changed. It makes sense that the Ballista can be spotted out pretty far away because it is an anti-air focused ship, and you can make the argument that it has ship-sized sensors that are detectable. But the other vehicles that can't defend need to be a lot more stealthy. I'm talking like 100 meters or less detection range. This would give them the ability to sneak up and actually be used in something like Jumptown. Perhaps the biggest issue though is that the medical system just doesn't work as they intended. I recall them saying that they wanted it so that 90% of the time you would go down into a down state and you wouldn't die, leaving your body able to be revived. I found that the reverse is true. 90% of the time, you're just dead, with 10% of the time maybe being able to be revived if the system doesn't bug out or if your body doesn't disappear. Furthermore, bodies are just vanishing immediately on death, which could be part of the problem. So this even further exacerbates the issue with people choosing not to do any ground combat. And don't even get me started on the tiered injury system. That just doesn't even work. Because most of the time you're dead, there's no tiered injuries. You're just going back to the hospital. So that whole system is just, it's like it's not even there. I think that CIG needs to go back and retweak the system and make it so that most of the time you're going to a down state. Maybe even remove the ability to be killed immediately. That way for sure, in practice, it's working as they intended, and it's just honestly more fun this way. It's not fun to go straight back to a hospital. But what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Let me know down in the comment section below. I still think that this is one of the best events that we've ever had for Star Citizen, and for myself, it's one of the best experiences I've ever had in gaming, at least in the science fiction genre. But that's it for now, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you know what to do, and also don't forget to hit that bell icon if you do. I'll see you in the next one.